I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Tim O'Toole, the Managing Director of London Underground. Maybe I can kind of start with my first question. How is it that an America is not known for its management of public infrastructure, is Managing Director of London Underground? And what does it bring you as an American kind of in terms of special expertise?
I met with some employees once and I asked them if they had any questions, and one of them said, "There's 65 million people on this island, what the hell did we need you for?" So I know there's some skepticism of my coming over here, but actually I don't come from public operation of railways. I operated a freight railway in the United States. It ran from New York to Chicago and down to St. Louis and up to Montreal. And so I actually never run a metro before, but they came to me because I had a background in finance that they thought might be useful in trying to deal with the rebuilding of the underground.
One of the themes of this series of interviews is reinvention, and you mentioned the rebuilding of the underground. What does the underground need beyond repair and maintenance? What can be new about an underground?
Well, just about everything's got to be new. It was really mortgaged over the last 30 years to build the JLE, and no money, real money, went into it. New York went through the exact same thing. I mean, New York was in far worse shape than London. New York used to have one derailment a day before they put in about $27 billion to the system. Same thing has to happen here. So it really means you got to rebuild all the track. You've got to buy new trains. You have to put in new signal systems. What's different about London is the tunnels are so small and so deep in the ground. It's unique. Any metro in the world, if you think of the metro, great large tunnels very close to the surface, where these tunnels are just 11 feet, 8.5 inches in diameter, and there's only 15 centimeters between that tunnel wall and the train. So you can't make the tunnels bigger, so you've got to put in new signal systems so you can fire more trains down the pipe.
And that's what's going to happen?
Yes, that will happen. It will take a while. People won't believe it till they see it, I know, but it'll be, I would say, you'll see the first completely new signal system on the Jubilee line in 2009. In the meantime, we'll be rebuilding track and the like. And then it comes about every year after that, you get a new line. So then it'll be the Northern line, then the Victoria line, and then ultimately the thing that will make believers out of everyone is we will have a rebuilt subsurface, so the Circle line and the Metropolitan and the District. And people will be pleased to know that at that time, those trains will be air conditioned.
Now we spoke to Marjorie Scardino. It will be later in the program, the interview with her. And actually, Marjorie mentioned that sort of necessity or urgency of reinvention. And particularly in terms of the subway, the London Underground seems an important issue, the notion of reinvention. And we were wondering if you could maybe give us the bigger picture of how you imagine this reinvention to kind of happen. And maybe also what role in this globalization plays. I heard that you're making links, the underground here, to China. So I was curious to know more about that.
Yes, I spent some time at their invitation over with friends in Shanghai, and it's an interesting connection to make because we're the oldest system in the world trying to rebuild, and they are the newest system building at a furious pace. They have a system about half our size. By 2010, it will be our size. By 2015, it will be twice our size. And that's an example of what happens if you don't have a lot of planning powers to go secure. You could just build what you want as quickly as you can master the resources. But there is an important subject you touch on in invention and reinvention, in that, you know, if you look at the great challenges we face in the world, I mean, this year or next year will be the first year ever that more people live in cities than not. And the world is coming together, and we need new machines. We need machines that move people around, and you can still allow growth, and machines that deal with our great thirst for energy. And it is a frustration because if you look at the solutions we're applying to this today, they're mostly solutions that come from planners and lawyers, like the congestion charge. The question you ask yourself is, where are the Brunels of today? I mean, where are the great engineers? Why don't we have lighter, faster, more energy efficient trains instead of really just bespoke variations on some very old technology? And that's where we are now. And if you look at the great challenge we face, which is heat, we need completely new solutions than are available to us right now.
Now, as a part of this reinvention, I was told that you met actually every single person who works for the London Underground. Could you tell us about this plan?
Well, met's a little generous, but I did think that we had to bring people together, and so in November I hosted meetings for every single employee, and I would meet with them 300 to 500 at a time. I did it over 14 days, some 25 meetings, 3 a day often. And I would explain to them where I thought we were taking this place, and then also would just stand for questions. And it was an exhausting experience, but it's something they'd not done before. And it was a good time to do it because I was trying to capitalize on the way they felt about themselves coming out of 7/7, in that it was the first time in a long time where Londoners really accorded them the respect they deserved, and they felt good about themselves. And I wanted to remind them that it is easier to get through the day if you work really hard and please someone than if you spend, your time fighting the job and fighting the very people you're trying to serve.
Now, earlier this evening we had Inka Shonibare here in a conversation, and he told us about his project for the London Underground he realized some years ago. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about something very specific about the London Underground. This is very, very strong work with contemporary artists. If you could tell us about how the platform for the arts works and what are the plans for this?
Well, I always think the secret to running a company isn't to bring some new fangled solutions, but you have to look into it and you have to find the answers in the business. And when you look into London Underground, all the elements are there. You just have to bring it out. And one of those elements, however, is this respect for the complete product. And it was really born out of the work that Frank Pick did many, many years ago, who was a visionary managing director, because he knew it wasn't just about running trains, although that comes first. It's also about the precision of design and being sure that every single element of the passenger's experience is critical. So it was under him that Harry Beck's iconic map was created. It was under him that the new Johnston typeface was created, so you had the best signage in the world. And it was also under him where he really gave greater energy to this whole concept of poster art and advertising on the Underground, mostly because he wanted to distract the people as they waited for trains. But we also have to stay connected with that and show that we have some respect for the way we develop ambience, and Platform for Art is one of those ways. It started out somewhat modestly, but you can see now the exhibits we run at Gloucester Road, Piccadilly Circus, and other places, and we want to expand this as we rebuild the stations, and we will rebuild every single station before the Olympics. We want to find more spaces where we can put in public art. So we kind of stay true to this whole heritage of design that Frank Pick really gave birth to on the Underground.
I want to pick up the thread of engineering, because I think it's very interesting what you were saying, that where is the new engineering for this very ancient industry? Do you have a theory why people are not interested in engineering, or why the talent doesn't seem to go there?
Well, I just think...
Is it about...
I think it just that the innovation follows the money, and the money went into aircraft and in a whole other areas that didn't even exist. You have to remember when in the 1830s to 60s, when the rail industry was being born, if you would go into a bookshop, it was like going into a store now and seeing computer magazines. You know, there were countless periodicals all on railways, and if you think about Brunel and his father and all this genius that was brought into this industry, well, when money left the railways, post 50s, and everyone was excited about building cars and highways and trains, the technology kind of stopped. And what's really re-energized it somewhat is really the investment that's occurred in the Far East, in the new train systems there.
And the magnetic train is one of them, but
Yeah, well, it's
the most evident one.
the magnetic levitation train is in Shanghai. It was in Germany, and they bought it lock, stock, and barrel. It's a fascinating thing. I mean, you just ride on it, and it goes about, I don't know, something like 300 miles an hour. But it is a very wide train. I don't know if you'd want it here, though, because it also requires building a massive concrete structure from here to that wall, its entire length. It would cut a city in half pretty dramatically.
So new, but not desirable.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of those. But if you look at...
But where do you think could be reinvented? Just weight, or...?
It is about weight. It's about new materials. For us in London, it's about finding new ways of ventilation, finding trains that
Could air pressure play a role?
I'm sorry?
Could air pressure play a role? Could you pull vacuums and pull trains through the tube?
Well, they tried that, you know. The original lines here in London, they tried pneumatic railways. And in fact, they built a pneumatic railway to move goods. It was over near Paddington. And some of the dandies of the day insisted they were all going to ride it one night. And so about 60 of them insisted on getting on this little pneumatic railway. And they sent it down the line, and when they all came out at the other end, the blood was coming out of their ears, and they had to carry them out. So I don't think they're going to be repeating that experiment.
But this reminds kind of experiments of the now very old American kind of futurist Jacques Fresco, who sort of dreamed about these whole sort of subway and air train kind of scenarios for the future. I was wondering, what is your dream for the London Underground for the next kind of years to come?
Well, I believe it is like Blake, you know, a wall falls apart if the center will not hold, and I think the underground is the center, but it will never be brand new. Even with all the investment, the tunnels will still be too small and too deep. So it's about capitalizing on the heritage that's there. And what's different about the underground than any other metro system is the number of employees that are on the stations. That's completely unique. If you go to New York or you go to Paris, they have a different business model, and the business model is the public will figure it out. London, because it's so deep, you need people to make up for the physical shortcomings. So what I'm hoping is that once we get an absolutely reliable train service, so that's every 2 minutes through the center on every line, and after we get ventilation, so it's not like running a convection oven on days like today, we'll also have this continuing environment where we care for the people who use it, so that someday in the future when people say, well, what's the best system in the world? They're likely to say, well, London Underground. And when challenged and people say, well, how could you say that with the modern systems in the Far East? The answer will be, well, I don't know. I felt safe. The place was clean. People always helped me when I got confused. And, it takes me to the most wonderful places in the world. And that's my dream.
What is your relationship with politics?
Well, I work for the mayor, which is a fascinating experience. He is absolutely determined to make this the greatest city in the world, and especially the one that uses the most public transport. It's the only major city in the entire world that there's actually been a modal shift to public transport, 4% during his term. That doesn't exist anywhere else. And
what is the total percentage now of people using the subway?
Well, on us, it's the people who come into the center where we serve. It's between 65 and 80%, depending on the season, use public transport. That's especially where I come from. That's absolutely unheard of. Well, one good thing about Mayor Livingston, though, I have to say. He hires professionals and he just lets them get on with it. He never, ever tells me what to do in terms of operations. He's really a perfect boss in that respect.
How much stability do you need? Because these are very long-term ambitions.
How much time will it take?
Yeah. No, I mean, whatever time it takes, they're very long-term ambitions.
Right.
And we live in a kind of very short-term kind of political framework. 4 years, 3 years is a kind of maximum stability for any ambition to survive?
That is a problem. It's one of the reasons they created this otherwise diabolical financing structure, the PPP, for 30 years, because it's so hard to change. That also becomes a straitjacket. But that is also why, in my opinion, the Paris Metro is so good, because politicians in Paris don't have to be brave. There is a transport tax that is in place. It's been there for years, and it just automatically funnels money to the RITP so that they're constantly rebuilding, rebuilding. And the problem we face here is when you have long-life capital assets, it's very easy to kid yourself, live off them. They don't break for a while, but when the belt comes off the machine, you pay hell. And that's what's happened here in London. The belt came off the machine a couple of years ago, and now we have to spend a fortune to bring it back.
That's actually a great conclusion. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.